Bob Chapek, who was the CEO of the Walt Disney Company,
Walter Disney, yeah,
who took over for former CEO Bobbert Iger.
Bobbert Iger, yes, that is his name.
Well, Bob Chapek just stepped down, and Bob Iger is coming back in. And this is big news for a myriad of reasons. First and foremost, a lot of people don't like Bob Chapek and what he's been doing, and a lot of people.
Have you been to the Marvel land in California Adventure recently? It's bad.
I'll be there in December, so
well, you'll see.
Well, it is funny you mentioned that. I've been talking about how my trip to Disneyland in December is sort of a farewell tour for me, where I'm like, this is going to be like the last time I go there for a long while until they get their shit together. Because from everything I've heard from like, Genie Plus or whatever, Lightning Lanes, all that shit, not paying their employees enough. It just seems like a whole clusterfuck over there. And the shareholders agree. To the point where just a couple weeks ago, Jim Cramer, he's a guy that like throws his mugs on the ground. He's like, the stock market.
Yeah.
He was on his show and he's like, they got to get rid of Bob Chapek because he's destroying this company. And there's so many different reasons for that, but I want to get your take on it before I go on a huge diatribe here.
It's really interesting that they're bringing back someone that that already worked there. Like what happened there? Like are they just like, hey man, could you come back for a minute because we got to get rid of this guy? Or was it like, did he come back and went, hey, I'd like to work, and they're like, oh, perfect timing, dude, because we got you. Like I want to know why didn't they just go with somebody else? I
have theories for that, but go on.
I'm excited because Chapek seems to be not the best. He seems to kind of just float and just do whatever. It doesn't seem like he cares a whole lot. And every Star Wars thing that comes out, it always has some sort of problems. And I don't know if that's because of like Kathleen Kennedy making decisions or if it's like Bob Chapek making decisions that are like, yeah, no, we're going to announce this game. We're not going to announce this movie, but the movie's never going to come out. We're going to announce this movie, but we're going to change everything about it. And you're not going to hear about that ever again. Or I don't know, man. We need a shake up in Disney, I think. And I think this is only a good thing.
Yeah. To go back to what you were saying about why Bob Iger, why bring back Bobby Iger. I think, he decided long ago, I think probably that he wanted to retire. He's, I think in his 60s and rich as hell because he was the fucking CEO of Disney. And I think before that he was like the CEO of like ESPN. So like the dude is doing just fine. Right. And I think he selected Chapek because before Chapek was the CEO of Disney, he was the head of the Disney parks. So, he was kind of in line to take over. And with all the shit that's happened throughout it, Bob Iger has been doing interviews where he's like, I don't agree with that decision. That is not a good decision. And I think, I think I think Bob Iger, Papa Iger, as I like to call him, loves Disney, and it's like his pride and joy, and he wanted to see it do well. So much so that if you remember when he stepped down, he remained as head of the board for a year just to have a peaceful transition to make sure things went well. Well, that transition happened and things kind of went to shit. And I think he kind of feels partly responsible for it. And he wants to right the ship, I think. And I don't think Bob Iger is going to be there very long. No. There was actually a guy in line to take over for Bob Chapek because Bob Chapek was doing such a poor job, and Bob Chapek fired him, which is hilarious. So I think Bob Iger is in there. I think the board members and the shareholders came together. They had an emergency shareholder meeting a couple weeks ago, and this is probably why. And I think they were like, hey, let's give it to Bob Iger. He'll right the ship. And this will be the only time you'll see this in history, I think, Nick, where a company fires their CEO and replaces their CEO and it seems unstable. But the shares went up because of it, because people love Bob Iger that much.
Yeah. Everybody hates Bob Chapek or whatever.
Yeah, he's a beloved CEO. So here's a little history lesson. All right, if I could have the floor for a moment.
You've had the floor this whole time.
I know. I'm taking it. I'm taking it some more.
That's fine. I don't have a whole lot to say.
So here's a little history lesson for you. Okay. I'm a bit of a Disney adult, a little bit of one. I love Disney. I'm not weird though. I don't like live on a Disney. That's weird as fuck. Okay. I don't have like Mickey Mouse's hanging up in my, that's weird, but I do like Disney. And, but, back in the day, all right, there was a guy named Michael Eisner, and people kind of liked Michael Eisner as CEO for a minute. He was kind of in charge of the, what was called the Disney animation renaissance, right? With Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Lion King, these things were huge, and he was a part of that. But then towards the tail end of that, he opened California Adventure, which people fucking hated that park. People thought it was terrible. He opened Euro Disney, which was also a failure of a park. The movies were going downhill in the early 2000s. If you remember, it was like Chicken Run. Like, who fucking remembers Chicken Run?
Hey, man, I remember Chicken Run.
Like, no one remembers that shit. I remember it just because Zach Braff was the guy. He was the voice, if you remember.
Of the chicken?
Yeah, he was the chicken.
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
but I believe it.
Things were going downhill. They had this partnership with Pixar, but it was waning. Steve Jobs was like, I don't even want to be with Disney because Michael Eisner sucks. So then Michael Eisner stepped down and Bob Iger took over. During the Bob Iger years is when we got the deal with Pixar. Now Pixar is owned by Disney. Marvel was purchased under Bob Iger. Star Wars was purchased under Bob Iger. Fox was purchased under Bob Iger. And not to just be like, this is a cynical, like, he buys everything. But on top of that, he also took California Adventure, fixed it. People love California Adventure now. He took Euro Disney and turned it into Paris Disney. People kind of like Paris Disney now. He opened Shanghai Disney, which is a huge success. He also, on top of all of that, it wasn't just known properties that were doing huge business. It was things like Frozen that were doing huge business, like he was just killing the game, Right. I think when it comes to owners and operators of Disney, it's going to go Walt Disney as like the number one granddaddy of Disney, and then Bob Iger. Like those are going to be the two that people talk about.
Like, you think he's going to have a statue next to Disney?
Like it's totally possible, but it's because Bob Iger has a respect for the foundation of what Disney built that he would never do that, because he knows that the foundation is always and forever will be that mouse, Right. And he respects that. Chapek, on the other hand, didn't respect that. I mean, just recently in an interview, he talked about how animation isn't really that important when it comes to Disney, and they want to change the framework of what Disney's about and lean more into like maybe some adult content on Disney Plus. And
well, that's fine,
right? It's fine as long as you have the
other stuff,
of like, this is for kids first, and then the other stuff comes later. Right. And I think Bob Iger was always good about that. It's like, we have, these Fox properties, but we have Frozen, like that's our key. That's our key to the kingdom. And that's how you keep bringing more and more people in, is by getting them as kids. And if you move away from that, not great. So then on top of that, with Bob Chapek, Bob Chapek was in charge of the Disney parks, and he's only been there for like 2-3 years, right? And in that time, he's crumbled the parks, so to speak. And to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt here, he did take over during COVID, which is a terrible time to take over. But people are complaining about how the hygienes in the park are not what they used to be, and that used to be like a shining part of Disneyland. Is like you go that used to be a thing that people would say. You go to the park, you could eat off the floor. It's so clean there. That's not the case anymore because they can't keep staff anymore because they pay their staff slave wages. Then with the Disney Plus stuff, now you just feel like you go, or with the Genie Plus stuff rather, you just feel like you're going there to have money taken away from you. You don't feel like you're having a magical experience anymore. You feel like they're just trying to rip you dry, which Disney always had a little element of that because, of course, they're a company first and foremost.
Right.
But you need that magic, to get me to give you my money. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you end up with people like me who are like, fuck Disney. I'm not going back after this time, Right. And then on top of that, Universal Studios has been making moves, and they're slowly overtaking Disney as park leaders with the advancement of like the Hogwarts stuff, and now the Mario Land that's opening up, and they're building more parks in different countries and stuff, and they're expanding in California as well. So it's just been like endless nonsense going on with Bob Chapek. So that's my brief history. That's my history lesson with the Bobs. But yeah, it makes total sense that they'd bring back Bob Iger. I have a feeling he's not going to be there for very long. My guess is he'll probably stick around for 2 years, right the ship, pick a guy, mentor that guy or girl to take over. Wouldn't it be wild if it was Kathleen Kennedy?
That would be wild, dude.
Because as much as we hate Kathleen Kennedy, a huge fan of Kathleen Kennedy is Bob Iger. So
yeah, but to be fair for Kathleen Kennedy, she's all things Star Wars, and she may have said too many things or done too many things wrong, but she's also been around for some of the good stuff. There's also good things that she's also done. But all in all, just fuck Kathleen Kennedy. You know what I mean?
I agree. I think she's better served as like a producer, like for a movie rather than like, I think for the position she has, you need a bit of more of a creative edge, sort of like Kevin Feige, where he's a bit more of a creative, as well as a good leader, where I think Kathleen Kennedy is a bit more hardlined, which is like, I almost feel like she would be good as like a replacement CEO, because I think she wouldn't be in charge of like actually
creatives
making decisions. She would just be hiring creatives, because she is good at hiring creatives.
Right.
Because if you look at it, she did hire Lord and Miller. She fired them as well, but those are good creatives. She did hire Ryan Johnson. People hate where it went, but he is a great creative, like, so she's good at letting people, and finding people. It's just, I think as the head of Star Wars, not great. But
no.
Yeah, so I don't think Bob Iger is gonna be there very long, but
no, I think you're right. I think he's just there to right the wrongs and fix some shit. Hopefully he can turn a whole bunch of stuff around, like the parks.
Parks are a main thing, I think.
Fix that stupid ass Disney Genie bullshit.
Let's not forget as well, on top of the Disney Plus stuff with Chapek, if you remember the Scarlett Johansson stuff.
Oh yeah.
With Black Widow, like that was a huge snafu. The stuff with the Pixar movies being exclusively on Disney Plus, to the point where this is rumors, but a bunch of the creatives allegedly planned walkouts on behalf of that, especially when that movie Turning Red came out. Because they felt it got buried on Disney Plus by not being released in theaters. So the theory also, what I heard, and this is unsubstantiated by anyone. I just heard this on John Campia's podcast just a second ago, actually, and he also said like this is allegedly, but apparently the heads of Disney Studios, which would be like the guys who make the live action Disney stuff, the guys who Kevin Feige, Kathleen Kennedy, the head of Pixar, all went to the shareholders and said, if you don't do something about Bob Chapek, we're all walking.
Wow.
So yeah, so pretty wild stuff, and the dude wasn't even there for 2 years. pretty wild.
Crazy. Seems like a bad pick in the first place.
Yeah, which I think is why Bob is back. Bob Iger is back because he's like, I fucked up. I shouldn't have picked him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And who maybe it was one of those things like he didn't show his true colors until he got to the top and fake it till you make it sort of thing.
Yeah, or maybe, like he was good at running the parks when he had someone over him to make sure he was reined down, but then he takes control. And I do think a big part of being the head of Disney in particular, as opposed to other companies, is you need a little bit of creative edge when you're the head of Disney. Like Walt Disney, right? He was a business genius, but he was also an artistic genius because he cared about the art and what the art was bringing, and that's what made him so successful. Same with Michael Eisner. Same with Bob Iger. Bob Iger wasn't originally like a CEO type. He was a news anchor for sports, and that and he also bought ESPN. Good shocker there. But yeah. Anyway, this is why this show is called Lonercast, because I just need somewhere to be alone to talk about this shit.
Hey man, I'm with you. I'm right here with you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
We're in it together.
Last thought though, before we move on to MPD numbers, my conspiratorial brain though makes me think he picked Bob Chapek, and Bob Chapek knew he'd be the fall guy because he knew COVID was coming, and he's like, we're gonna look terrible during COVID.
He knew COVID was coming. Okay.
He's like, COVID's gonna fuck us. Well, because he stepped down right like a week before lockdown started happening.
Could be.
It's like
could be. Yeah.
Coincidence, and now things are opening up. Things are just starting to stabilize a bit, and he's back. I don't know. Seems a little fishy.
Little sus.
What's going on there, Bobby? Anyway, I'm excited he's back. I'm not like too optimistic that he'll actually fix everything though. We'll see. Any final thoughts there, Nick?
No.
No.
Not a one.
Not a one.
Not a one.